Float around. Definition. You say that an object is floating around when you think it is not far away, but you cannot see exactly where. For example, I can't find my purse, but it must be floating around here somewhere.
Floating around in the ocean while his kingdom goes up in flames?
Floating around a star?
I don't have any of those floating around.
Not to be disagreeing, but if we're talking about something floating around between this priest and my son, it ain't my son's fault.
He said at the time of the break-in, there was so much money floating around that I know that Jordan got part of it.
Do you really think your parents are just going to be floating around here waiting for you?
That means there's one golden ticket still floating around somewhere.
There's a lot of drugs that float around in there.
We're floating around in the middle of nowhere, and
we had some late changes to the conference room dimensions, so there were different versions floating around and things got really complicated.
Float around. Definition. If an idea or story floats around, it is discussed or repeated by a lot of people. For example, there's a rumor floating around that you're thinking of leaving.
I've been asking around a bit, and there's a few theories floating around, but I don't know if any of them are true or not.
Yeah, there's some rumor floating around that some hotshot piston cup race car is setting up his big racing headquarters here.
Really?
For some reason, there are 3 different shift schedules floating around.
And now there's like these feelings floating around, and I feel like we're always gonna regret it if we don't see if they lead somewhere.
These land deals floating around, those new corporations.
There's just rumor floating around the two of you married.
There's so many rumors floating around, I can't be sure of anything.
There's some word out there floating around like an on-off switch for me that if I ever hear it, I'll just go completely unconscious.
Not half so bad as certain rumors floating around this place about you.
Some preordained chart floating around up in the ether with our fate all figured out.
Potter about. Definition. To spend time doing small, unimportant tasks in a relaxed way, without hurrying or having a clear purpose. For example, she spent the afternoon pottering about in the garden.
Probably pottering about somewhere.
Well, Frank's a professor, but he's often there in sessions, pottering about, making tea.
And you're just there, pottering around, doing...
I like the idea of you telling your progeny of this objectionable old fool who used to potter around the garden.
I love to spend quiet weekends pottering around my Malibu beach house.
And allow me to go pottering around down here where I have no business.
Potter around at night with the radio on.
Switch around. Definition. To change the order or position of things, often by swapping them. For example, she switched around the furniture to make more space in the living room.
Same letters switched around.
I'm switching people's mail around.
Switch around from camera to camera, depending on what seems to be the most intriguing to them.
I'm switching around some things for business.
But you hated him too, Dr. Hartman. He switched around all the bones on the skeleton in my office. I don't know what's what anymore.
Play around. Definition. To behave or treat something in a careless way. For example, stop playing around and get on with your homework.
I often came to play around the school grounds on a Saturday.
Hey, wanna play around?
Can we stop playing around now?
But I do play around with other things.
Are you playing around with that man again?
No.
Jessica doesn't play around, does she?
Why else would a lot of you be playing around in the dirt while the rest of the country prepares for war?
Well, we can play around here then.
We were just playing around.
Okay, kid, enough playing around.
Bang around. Definition. Do something noisily. For example, I could hear her in the kitchen banging around.
That equipment may be banging around.
Ooh, doesn't it bang around?
Banging around an awful lot out there. Been fasting and praying for days, but all I can hear is the sound of my own voice banging around my head.
And I can't sleep with you banging around with that thing.
Yeah, he banged around in here like some kind of hot shot.
Well, at least one hole will get banged around here.
We heard some banging around up here.
These two are fighting, and ideas are banging around in Bella's head and heart like lights in a storm. There's got to be someplace to bang around.
Clown around. Definition. To behave in a silly or playful way, often to make people laugh. For example, the kids were clowning around in the classroom instead of paying attention to the teacher.
Hey, check it out! I'm surfing the net!
Hey, his clowning around is putting me at ease.
Because I was there to stick it to Hardman, not clown around with some...
All we gotta do out there is just a bit of clowning around.
You know how we clown around here now.
You could clown around forever. Neither one of you sees your natural boundaries.
Yeah, we're gonna clown around.
Quit clowning around and get in the car. Buzz! Megan, don't clown around.
I just love to clown around.
Wow, I can't believe I used to use the old one. Looks so unsafe. All right, enough clowning around. Let's talk turkey. We want to play the feud.
Well, you're in luck.
Skirt around. Definition: to avoid discussing or dealing with a difficult or sensitive subject directly. For example, he skirted around the issue of salary during the interview.
Because I feel like we're skirting around this whole thing. Do you have an issue?
Who skirted around society's edges and never done shit. Takes one to know one.
Are you so afraid of this new girl we have to take elaborate measures every time you want to skirt around ethical boundaries?
All day y'all been skirting around the issue.
Well, you gotta keep skirting around it.
We'll cross over the Harvey Ranges here, skirting around Wellington on the Macquarie River. From there,
we'll take a southeasterly course, skirting around it as long as we can, but it is pretty loose.
Look, if you fell out of love with me, you should have left me a long time ago instead of skirting around behind my back.
And you keep skirting around the issue.
Work around. Definition: to find a way of working that avoids a particular problem without actually solving the problem. For example, the lack of test data is a problem, but we've found a way to work around that.
I can work around all that.